Hello, everybody. It's lovely to, well, not see you, but have you with us on this rather grey evening. My name is Shuna Hubble. I'm Head of Careers at Barton. I think I've seen quite a lot of you in the talk we did last week, and I hope you also managed to join in the Student Finance talk as well. We're very lucky this evening to have David Winstanley, who is Head of global everything at Southampton University. Our favourite our favourite Russell Group University locally, the only Russell Group University locally, but a really good uni that a lot of our students apply to and go to, which we're very, very proud of. So David's going to give you a talk about the university landscape and how things are looking at the moment and how things will look for your children when they eventually do go to university. There will be an opportunity to ask questions at the end. So please feel free either during or after the talk to put questions in the chat, and then I'll go through them as the talk finishes. So over to you now, David. Thank you very much for joining us.
Lovely. Thank you, Shuna. I'm just going to see if the screen is being shared. There we are. Oh, that's just me. Right. Wonderful. Good. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's talk. As Shuna said, my name's David Winstanley. I'm the Director of not quite global everything, but our recruitment and admissions activity. So the work we do with schools and colleges across the world with prospective students and, of course, getting them into the university through our admissions office. And tonight we're going to cover quite a range of different things over probably the next half an hour or so, which will leave some time for questions as well. So an introduction from me. I'm going to talk a little bit about the current landscape, where universities are at the moment, what's going on in the higher education sector. We'll talk a little bit about why you might go and what universities actually do. Some of you will be very familiar with the work of universities. Some of you work at the university. I know you're out there. Some of you will be less familiar with the work of higher education institutions and universities. So I'll talk a little bit about that. We'll focus a little bit on choosing a course in university and how you might go about that, and what we as universities are looking for. And as I mentioned, there'll be plenty of opportunity for questions. Obviously, this is a virtual event. I can't see your faces. I can't see you nod off. So I hope you enjoy it, and we'll, as I say, take any questions as we go through. And the team at Southampton are always open for questions about anything to do with higher education. We've been supporting your students at the college all week and do that throughout the year. So we have a great relationship with the college and we look forward to continuing that. So first of all, I thought I'd give just a little bit of a reflection on last year and the 2021 entry cycle. So that's when students started in September at the start of the academic year, was quite different and quite strange. It was equally as strange, if not more strange, than the 2020 entry cycle, which of course was very much affected by the pandemic as well. And we're seeing those ripples of disruption continue to go through. But to give some sense of where we're at, in 2021, we saw over 600,000 people from the UK applying to higher education. So that was an increase of 5% on the 2020 cycle, and the 2020 cycle was an increase on 2019 as well. So despite the impacts of the pandemic, we still saw a lot of growth in applications, and that comes from people of all ages, from the biggest group being 18-year-olds coming straight from school or college, through to students joining us at any age, from any background, into university programs. So a 5% increase on UK applicants, but only a 1% increase in acceptances. So nearly 500,000 students joined us at universities in 2021, and that was a 1% growth on the year before. So more applications, more applicants, more people, but only a slight increase in those that were actually accepted. Other things to bear in mind are the proportion of the population coming to higher education. So a record 38.3% of 18-year-olds came to universities this year, and that was up from 37% in 2020. But this hides quite a big differential across the country. So you'll see from the slide here, over 50% of 18-year-olds in London went to university, and that's the first time it had gone over the 50% mark. It was 49% last year. 40% in the southeast, and with London and southeast being probably the strongest university entry rate areas of the country. The southwest, conversely, and the northeast have the lowest proportion of students at 18 going to higher education. So there are some quite big differences across the country. But one of the biggest differences, and one that I find quite alarming, is the difference by gender. So 32.4% of UK 18-year-old men joined universities last year, whilst 44.5% of 18-year-old females came along. And I was thinking that's quite a surprising statistic there. So we find in universities there's generally quite a gender imbalance between women and men coming in. So work to do there to encourage some more of our male 18-year-olds to come along to university. So that was the 2021 cycle. Other things that happened is that the acceptance rate, so the number of students who applied who then got in, did fall from 84% to 81%, but that still led to greater numbers overall starting at university in 2021 than ever before. And part of that was around the A-level grades. And you'll remember last year when we had centre assessed grades, teacher assessed grades, there were no exams. We saw a doubling of A-level students, the number of A-level students getting the top grades compared to 2020. And 2020 saw a doubling from 2019. So in 2021, we saw 4 times as many students doing A-levels getting the highest grades to what they had done in 2019. And that meant that 75% were accepted at their firm choice. So as they go through the application process, the firm choice is the one they absolutely want to go to, and 75% of those ended up at their number one choice. And only 10% came through clearing. So you might be familiar with clearing. It's the process over summer where students who haven't got into their firm choice of university then are matched with a place still existing. So if they're there in summer without a place that they've managed to secure, they can come along in summer and see if we've got spaces left. And usually a much higher proportion come through that route. Last year, because many more students got the grades that they'd hoped to, we only saw 10% of entrants coming via the clearing route compared to 75% who'd got into their firm choice. So that was last year. What are things looking like for this year? Well, overall, the number of applications has increased, and this isn't a surprise because 2 things are happening here. One, we're on a demographic incline, so we're seeing the number of 18-year-olds increase year on year, probably for the next 10 years or so. And that's from a sort of historic low. The numbers have been going down, 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 probably since about 2009. So we've got past that valley and we're heading up the other side. So more and more 18-year-olds are here in the UK. And the rate at which students are applying and going to university is increasing as well. So not only have we got more, but we've got more of them, of that number, who are applying. Interestingly, again, that's not a flat picture across different sorts of universities. And UCAS, the National Universities and Colleges Admissions System, they categorise universities into 3 groups: high tariff higher education institutions, so those that ask for the highest grades, medium and low. And the applications to the highest grade requirement universities are continuing to increase more than that to lower and medium tariff. And just on the right of the screen there is an indication of where we're seeing some of that growth coming. Medicine, again, it had a 13 or 14% increase in popularity last year. It's had another 7% this year, so that's enormous. Computing this year has seen a little bounce there. They've gone up 13%. That's the biggest increase in subject areas. Humanities and liberal arts are up 10%. Communications and media up 10%. Geography and environmental studies 4%. Business management 2%. So that's based on a change from this year at this point in the cycle to last year at the same point in the cycle. In the social sciences, we've seen a slight decline in subjects allied to medicine. So that's your nursing, physiotherapy, orthoptics, occupational therapy. We've seen a slight decline there as well. However, 2021 in those subjects saw a massive increase on the year before. So a bit of a changed, a mixed up picture across different areas. But again, things like medicine are continuing to become very competitive indeed. And to give you some idea of what that actually looks like in overall proportions, the size of the squares here and rectangles are representative of the proportion of students in each group. So you'll see that top orange left corner, that's those subjects allied to medicine. So even though very slight decline this year, they're still the most popular. So nursing, radiotherapy, radiography, occupational therapy, physiotherapy, things like that still make up the biggest group of subjects at universities across the UK. These figures are for England. So 300,000 applications to those subjects. Business and management comes in at second with 212,000 applications. Social sciences, so that's things like sociology, politics, coming in third, and then other ones down there. So, for example, I think it's interesting to point out here, whilst medicine is one of the most competitive courses, the numbers of students going for it is actually relatively small compared to 3 times as many who go in those other subjects linked to medicine, and more than twice as many people applying for business courses than for medicine courses. However, in medicine, there aren't as many places as there are for business and management. So I thought that gave you an interesting idea as to the popularity of subjects in general across England on this particular graphic. Other things that are happening this year, this graph shows you the number of applications per person. So students are able to make up to 5 applications through their UCAS form, and that can be to 5 different courses, or it can be to 5 different universities, but a maximum of 5. And in the past few years, that's wobbled about a bit from a low point of about an average of 4.2 programs per person in 2010 up to 4.56. So more students are using all of those choices, having a broader set of universities that they apply to at the start of the cycle as they make their decisions further on. And that reflects people wanting that extra choice and delaying the decision as to which one they want to go to. So what does the overall picture look like going forward? We have a growing number of 18-year-olds in the UK after many years of decline, and that will be increasing year on year. But that doesn't mean the number of places available in universities are increasing at the same rate. So as I put there at the bottom, we're expecting to see greater competition for places. And that means that the research that your student does in which course is right for them and are they matched to it is really important over coming months before they make their application. We're going to continue to see the impact of the pandemic happening. So exams are this year going to be generously graded or more generously graded than back in 2019, pre-COVID. And students have been given advanced information about some of the topics they can expect to see in their exams. So we're still expecting to have a higher than normal number of higher grades that are awarded this year. And the other thing to mention, as announced a couple of years ago, is that there are some changes to the student finance system. One of the things they're not changing is the maximum fee that universities are able to charge. So nearly every university in the UK charges its UK students £9,250, in England certainly, and that we're not able to increase that until at least 25-26. So that'll be a 7-year freeze on that, and you'll be aware of the increased cost of living, the increase of inflation that impacts on all organisations and families. And so that will be a struggle for the higher education industry. But that's pretty much what the overall picture is looking like. So a competitive environment for your students, which means that choosing the right course and putting the preparation into their application is going to be more important than ever. So one of the things I wanted to reflect on is just a little bit about what universities are and what they are for, because not everyone is as fully aware as others will be on this. And I think particularly in the sort of universities that Southampton is, and Shuna mentioned earlier about Russell Group universities, but those big research-intensive universities are here to create knowledge. They're here to find out new things. So it's not just an extension of teaching. It's not just an extension of what schools and colleges do, but it's about defining what happens in the world, answering the world's biggest questions. So things like climate change, how we tackle it, how we measure it, how we prevent it, how we ensure that we survive it. Things like world economics. We've seen incredible changes to the economic situation in the past fortnight because of world events. And that is remarkable. And we need to know what makes that happen. How can we recover from that? How can other countries recover from that? What impact is that going to have? History, archaeology. We've got a fantastic marine archaeology program here at Southampton. And, you know, I was reading the other day about the, I knew I'd say this and I forget what the ship was called. The one that's under the Antarctic that the explorers were using, the Endeavour, I think. Enormously important work there, finding out about what we've done, but also inequality and poverty and famine, politics, technology, all of those sorts of things that we study at universities. We teach students about it, we engage students in our research, and we find out new knowledge to try and tackle some of those major challenges facing the world. And climate change, as an example, is something that universities have been working on for many, many years. And often when we ask students, you know, well, who's going to solve the problem of climate change? They might say, well, it's geographers, you know, because they did climate in geography. They might have done it in biology. And actually, in reality, it will be every subject, every group of specialists and experts that will have to come together and work together to solve the problem of climate change, from the engineers to the geographers to the health officials who will be helping human beings survive it. It will be about economics and politics and the decisions made in global cooperation to tackle climate change. So these massive problems are worked at in universities, and we collaborate and work with universities around the world to tackle those challenges. And as a student being in that environment, it's a hugely exciting and dynamic place to be, to learn from those experts who are very much at the cutting edge of knowledge for humans basically in the world. And what I wanted to do is have a quick run through a case study, and you know, the pandemic over the last 2 years has been a pretty horrific time. Many of us have lost loved ones. We've found it pretty hard work. It's turned our lives upside down and had a real impact. And one of the things that I saw and I was proud of working at a university and got to see in real life is a sort of real-time approach to research. And quite often the projects that we're working on are many, many years in length. We might expect never to see the outcomes of it in our lifetime. And if you take something like climate change, there's going to be a huge, many, many decades of work and research that are going to be focused on tackling that. But when the pandemic hit 2 years ago, we saw everything happen in real time. And the university didn't close. We might have stopped teaching in person. We might have stopped our shops being open and our libraries being open in the way they had done. But the core of the university, the research that we're doing that enables us to tackle those problems, continued going on. And the phones were ringing off the hook. The emails were filling up the inboxes as to what can we do as a university to help tackle the problem that's COVID. And it wasn't just about medicine. It wasn't just about how do we make people better, how do we develop vaccines and that sort of thing. So as a very quick run through, in January 2020, so before it had even hit our shores, really, we had our experts in the Centre for Demography, so looking at populations around the world and how people move and how that might make different places more susceptible to a pandemic. By March, we were trialling inhaled drugs. This was launched and used by our professors of respiratory medicine in the faculty, who were trialling these drugs already in March before any of us had gone to work at home to see what we could do to tackle it. We then had our engineers and medical staff working with McLaren, better known for Formula One probably, and Kemp Sales and other partners on can we develop a personal respirator so that in sending healthcare workers onto the front line when we didn't know what they were facing. Could we protect them through using technology and engineering? We also worked on understanding what the COVID virus looked like, how it gets into the human cells, how it is detected in order to contribute towards vaccine research by April in 2020, and also looking at how our engineering students could use their 3D printing and their computer-aided design to fast prototype different ways that we can protect people from this virus. So already we're only 3 or 4 months into knowing that this virus exists, and we were working on it. We looked at social inequality and how the lockdown measures would affect different sectors of society in different ways. And that was our geographers working with those at Cardiff Business School. And then back in engineering, we looked at how there'd been, and I think this was geography as well, actually, where people were dumping their fridges. All the communal tips were closed, the waste recycling centres were closed, so people were throwing their fridges and their dishwashers and everything else in fly tipping in rural communities. So we were looking at the impact of that on the environment, on the countryside, on those communities in those areas. And also then looking at the impact of homeschooling on young people, and how we might help young people to emerge in a better way and come out of that national lockdown by May in 2020. And the list goes on. We were doing things every week, every department, all the different disciplines, working together to tackle a worldwide human-facing problem. And I think for me, it was a real eye-opener as to watching research and education in real time addressing a global problem. So that to me is one of the reasons, is why universities exist. It's what we do. And when students join us, they become part of that community, part of a research community, an educational community that is diverse and exciting and dynamic, that they can contribute towards. So why would they go? Pursuit of that knowledge, getting a deeper insight and understanding of the subject that they love. It's about advancing their career as well. And we know that many, many students come to university because they want to improve their career options, improve the sorts of different jobs, increase their choice of different roles, careers that they might go into. And some of them will have a very focused perspective on that. I want to be a doctor, so I want to do medicine, or I want to be a teacher, I'm going to do education. And some might have a far less clear, and they think, well, actually, I'm going to go and do an English degree or a philosophy degree or a psychology degree because it will enable me to develop, to learn, to become a more rounded individual, to be exposed to different cultures, different people, different ideas, which are hugely valuable skills that employers are looking at when we go into the world of work. There's also plenty of research to demonstrate that graduates on average earn more over their lifetime than non-graduates, developing skills and confidence, and of course, having fun. And we never forget the fact that university years are intended to be, as well as being educational, as well as developing careers and skills, they're also meant to be some fun as well. So how do we encourage students to think about where they might go? So I think there's any number of different sorts of universities. We're a big, old, multi-faculty university. You can do most subjects here at Southampton. Others are more specialist. They're smaller. They might have, like us, they might have campuses all over the city, or they might have a campus out in the middle of nowhere. They might be focused on the sciences or the arts and humanities. They're all different. They will offer different sorts of courses. They will have different entry requirements and grades that a student will be needing to achieve in order to get in. But also we know that the cost of attending university and the distance from home will also be factors that students are expected to incorporate into their thinking. So we ask our students to think about what they actually enjoy. What do they enjoy and what are they good at? And if they can find something that's both of those things, then it's likely to keep them entertained and educated over 3 years, because essentially we want students to be successful. We want students to enjoy their course and to leave having fond memories of the university, but also using the skills they've developed in their careers. And so it's important for them to do some detailed research as they start narrowing down those options. There are many tens of thousands of course options around 320 odd universities in the UK. And as they narrow them down, they need to think about what is the best fit for me? What suits the way I learn? What suits what I'm interested in? What suits my lifestyle to get to where they want to be? And that might be about how it's taught, it might be about how it's assessed. We've talked a little bit about entry requirements, and all universities will state as clearly as they can, these are the sorts of students we're looking for, these are the sorts of A-levels or IB or BTECs we expect a student to have done, and the sort of grades we expect them to have got. Your student might be interested in work placements. They might want to do a year abroad, which we strongly encourage. They might want to do a year in industry, which can help their careers and help them focus on what they want to do, but to have a look at those options, but really to keep an open mind. So if your student is doing English, maths and geography at A-level, for example, that doesn't mean that they're restricted to English, maths and geography at university. And they could do law, and they could do philosophy, they could do geology and geography like I did with that combination. They can go into any of those sorts of options. So at the start of that research process, to keep a really open mind so that you can discover all of the exciting options that are out there. Where can you get this information? Well, UCAS, I mentioned it earlier. It's the National University and Colleges Admission Service. Their website there contains details of all courses, the entry requirements, the fees, the campus it's at, the number of years it is, all those sorts of things. There's lots of independent guides out there of varying different levels of quality. There's, like the TripAdvisor of universities, if you must, but lots of opportunities out there. University websites and prospectuses are there, and I think just a bit of caution there. We do like to make everything look as shiny and wonderful as possible, and every university website and prospectus will have, pictures of students looking incredibly happy in glorious sunshine, sitting on the grass, having a nice day. It's not always like that. It does occasionally rain down here in Southampton, as you know. So it's important to keep an open mind there as well. League tables will give you an idea as to what universities are about. They will give some indication of quality, but we'll talk a little bit about those in a moment. Admissions tutors, so our staff in the university, are more than happy to answer any questions you and your students might have. But also you'll know from friends, teachers, family, the careers service at Barton Peveril, where have other students gone? Are they enjoying it? What sort of things they're doing? And I think you also use Unifrog here as well. And that's a web-based platform where your students can find out more about the options available to them. So I did mention league tables very briefly. They do attempt to rank universities across the world and across the UK, and they will try and tell you what they think in the league table compiler's office is the best in the world or the best in the UK. They might tell you the best for a particular subject, the best as voted for by students, for researchers, the best for simply selling the newspaper in which they are featured. So it's important to think about what are the factors that you think are important, your student thinks are important for them. So these are the different league tables out there that are national. The Guardian, the Times, Sunday Times, the Complete University Guide, they all use different criteria to develop their league table and tell you which is best or which is not. The Guardian one will focus a bit more on student satisfaction and what student voice says. The Times and Sunday Times will talk about research quality as well and build that in. They'll talk about staff-student ratios. The Complete University Guide has a different set of criteria again. So it's important to understand what they're telling you. So when they say, well, this university is the best, you know why they think it's the best, and you can determine whether that is right for you and your student as well. So where is the best place to go? Well, of course, it's the University of Southampton, because I have to say that. I do think it's a fantastic place, but there are wonderful universities all over the place. And every student will have somewhere that's right for them. And doing that research, looking to align where a student's aspirations, where their entry requirements are, the subject they want to do, and the experience they're looking for, there will be a university out there for them that will match that. And finding it is really exciting. And will be the best fit and will enable that your student to be the happiest and most successful that they can be. So that's the bit about you choosing us. And throughout the whole of the admissions process, we see a sort of a bit of a power play going on. And at the early stage, at this point, as your students are approaching, thinking about where they're going to apply to, your student is in control. They are choosing where they want to go to university. Once they've applied, of course, it's then for the university to be in charge, and we have a look at the student's application, determine whether we think they're the sort of student that's going to benefit from our programme and is going to be successful and happy. So we will look for their intellectual and creative ability, depending on the course. We look for whether we think the student suits the course and whether the qualifications they've already done will enable them to be successful. We'll want to see evidence of their commitment and motivation, and we'll look for students that have a wide range of different interests and experiences. We might look at the extracurricular activities, and we'll definitely look for a level of passion, that they're excited about it and that they want to come to the university. And in an increasingly competitive context, students will have to demonstrate that through their application. So how will we determine that? We will look at their academic profile, we'll look at their GCSEs, we'll look at other qualifications they might have done. We'll also be looking at the predictions of what they're going to get in their level 3 qualifications, so in their A levels or equivalent. What are the teachers and tutors at Barton Peveril predicting for your students? And we ask those teachers and tutors to be honest with us. In their experience, and they've seen many students come through the college and go into university, what do they think is the most likely outcome of a grade that student is going to get? And in doing that, that enables your student to make the most appropriate choices that are aligned with their entry qualifications. We'll also be asking the college to write a reference. So what do they think about this student and the student's choices? Does it make sense? Does it reflect well what that student's all about and what they want to be doing? We'll ask about work experience on the application form and a personal statement, and we'll talk a little bit about that shortly. In most cases, we can make a decision on the basis of the application form. Where we do need more information, we might invite a student for an interview, for an audition, or a portfolio. And different courses will have that. In some, it's a necessity. So in the health sciences, in medicine, for example, we need to do interviews. In the performing arts, for example, in creative subjects, we might want to do auditions. We might want to see a portfolio of work, because in fine art, for example, the quality of the students' artwork is equally, if not more important than the grades they get in their A levels. And that will enable them to succeed and to engage well with the course. So very briefly about the personal statement, we do use it as part of selection. We do read them all. Different universities will take different approaches to this. It's about 47 lines long. It should be written by the student. It should be written about the student. And it gives us an opportunity to distinguish between applicants who quite often have similar academic profiles. And where we're looking for 2 A's and a B at A level, we will have many, many students who are likely to get 2 A's and a B. So in order to do some differentiation, we'll want to know a little bit more about that student. So what is it that they're looking for? Why are they choosing this particular course? And where it's not used particularly strongly sometimes in the application process, it can be used at confirmation as well. So confirmation is when the student gets their A-level results. And if we've asked them to get 2 A's and a B, they've only got an A and 2 B's, for example, and we still have a few places left, we will look back at those applications and determine whether this is the sort of person that we can forgive dropping a grade in their exams, who we might want to give a chance to and admit them to our programme. It's really the only personal information that we get from a student. It's the bit that we find most informative. So we know what school or college they've been to, we know where they live, we know how old they are, all those sorts of things. None of that really matters. We want to know about the person and whether they're going to be the right fit for our programme. And because most courses don't interview, it's really important that we get this information on the personal statement. If you are interviewed, then it's likely that the personal statement will be a basis of that interview, and we might ask you some questions about what you've written. But essentially, it's the student's chance to really impress us and differentiate themselves from all those other tens of thousands of people we mentioned earlier who are going to be applying for the same courses at the same universities. So what we want to know is, from that application, have they chosen the right subject for the right reasons? Can they survive at university level? Are they ready to be an independent learner? It might mean they're living away from home for the first time. It might be the first time they've had to get themselves out of bed to manage their own workload and all those sorts of things without you doing lots of that for them. So we'll be looking for indicators that say that they are independent and says that they are able to manage their time or able to manage their workload or get their work done in time and those sorts of things. We'll see that from the reference and we want to see it from them as well. We'll want to see if they've got a range of interests and aptitudes, but also that they've studied independently that particular subject. So what have they done that demonstrates that not just to get their A-level grades, but that they want to pursue it and know more about it for the rest of their lives? So what is it about that subject that excites them, and how can they give us evidence that they've gone out and found out more about that subject beyond just what they're doing at college or school? So one of the ways of doing that is to have a look at different courses, different programs. So ways that a student can demonstrate that they have a broad range of interests include attending online lectures or webinars. It might include wider reading about a subject. It might include keeping up with current affairs, listening to debates on Radio 4, watching performances if it's literature or if it's drama that they're studying. It might be about finding out about the latest developments in technology or in science in particular subjects that enables them to say to a university in the admissions process, yes, I've done the right A-levels. Yes, I'm going to get the right grades, but I want to do this course because it's something that I'm deeply, deeply excited about. And I want to spend the next 3, 4 or 5 years learning about. So where can they find these sorts of things? Well, one of the options is at universities. We offer lots of things, both in person and online. I'd encourage your students to go to university open days to get a real sense of what the campus is like. So not just the shiny photographs we put on our website, but to get a feel for the place. And that's really important when choosing. We've got a range of, and every university will have events going on. We've got a range of events going on at the moment under the banner of Degrees to Save the World. And this is our programme of events for mostly aimed at sixth formers to understand how the work we do in universities and the courses that universities offer can be used to help develop ways that we can, in a very broad way, save the world. So not just about climate, not just about the environment, but about communities, about entrepreneurship, about nature, about healthcare, all those sorts of things. There's a bit of a list of them there. The website is there as well, so you can find it from the university website. But as I say, every university will have a programme of public events where they show off their research, they show off their latest thinking, they have debates, they will incorporate partners and collaborators to do exciting things. The other thing to highlight, particularly if your student is interested in science or engineering, is SOTSEF and our Science and Engineering Day. That's on the 7th of May. It's going to be a combination of in-person events and virtual events, and the website is just sotsef.co.uk. There's the festival going on, and there's the National Science Week as well, 11th to 20th of March, which we are involved in, and then the Science and Engineering Day as well. So what are the benefits? How would I summarise the last half an hour or so? There are incredible benefits of going to university, both for the individual, but also for their families and for humanity in general. But it's important that students do their research, put the effort in, and make sure that they are focused on finding the right course for them at the right university that's going to be exciting and compelling and get them into the career they want to, if that's what particularly interests them. I would encourage your students to take advantage of online activities, and for you as well, but also to engage with all the activities that the college is putting on at the moment. And I know Shuna's got a fantastic programme of events going on all through the year, but particularly currently, to help your students and support them in their decision making. And the most important thing is that this is the student's decision. It is for the student to find out what really excites them, what's going to get them into a career that's fulfilling and enjoyable. And so do listen to your students about what they want to do and support them in finding out the best place for them to go to. And I think on that note, that was all I had planned to say at this point. If there are any questions, I think you can put them in the chat bar and we can answer them. And I can see some of them have come through at the moment. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and that should then, someone stopped sharing my screen for me. Wonderful.
Brilliant. Yes, but thanks, David. That was really good. And I hope everybody realises that David has a great kind of overview of the university landscape and everything that's going on there. So we got it straight from the horse's mouth. So that was brilliant. Please do feel free to ask questions. I can't see questions in the chat, George.
I can see some in the comments bar, I think there's the...
Oh, that's where they are. Okay.
So,
right, brilliant. Thanks, David. So
sorry, I'll let you...
I'll throw them at you. So Claire says, is economics classed as a social science? Usually.
And universities like to argue about things. Different universities will put them in different places. Most will have them within, our economics department is within our Faculty of Social Sciences, so it's generally classed as a social science. Some will see it as a pure science. And it depends on exactly where on economics you are, from econometrics to the more sort of political side of it. But generally, we would call it a social science here.
Yeah, thank you. And Charlie says, what should we be doing now to best prepare for university application for medicine?
Well, that's the perennial question, how to best prepare yourself for this. I think there's a number of things to do. One is to try and get some work experience. And I know that in the context of COVID and everything going on, that can be really hard work. So try and get some of that. And in the absence of that, try and find other ways to learn about what goes on in that area. And one of the reasons that people are asked to get work experience is not because we're then going to test you on what you've learned about, whether it's what diagnosis of health conditions or anything else. It's not about that. It's about understanding what it is that you're letting yourself in for, basically. So what is it about being in the medical profession? How will it feel? What are the different options? What excites you? And getting a realistic view of what being a doctor, being a medic is all about. So work experience is interesting. The thing that will most likely knock you off course is also your entry requirements. So hard work and revision is really important. It is competitive. You will need to get the highest grades there, and an awareness of what's going on in the medical world. It's not just about COVID. Lots of people will be using that as a case study. I've already done it this evening, so I can't complain about that. But what other things are going on in global health, in UK health sector, that will be interesting at that point. The other thing is to learn about how different universities teach medicine. So there's lots of different ways of doing it. There's the integrated way, there's the traditional way, there's the PBL, so problem-based learning way. Different universities do it in different ways. Understand what those different ways are and make sure that when you're applying that you know what it is you're applying for, because they all are slightly different ways of learning about medicine, and they will suit different sorts of people and students as they go through.
Yeah, thank you. And actually, I know, having seen Charlie yesterday, it's quite a useful thing to share to everybody about medical applications. People get a little bit concerned about work experience and can they get into a hospital to do specific clinical work experience? It's fantastically difficult, especially at the moment. And actually, Charlie's a lifeguard. And that is absolutely brilliant experience for medicine, because he's learning so much, so many transferable skills that will be really useful for him when he applies to medical school. So he's most of the way there in terms of that kind of thing.
That's right. Being a lifeguard, getting a part-time job in a care home, doing first aid training, St John's Ambulance. There's lots of different ways of developing that experience.
Yeah, thank you. Hannah asks, what are the sorts of things that really stand out for you in a student when doing interviews and looking at personal statements?
So I think one of the biggest things is enthusiasm, is that deep, passionate enthusiasm for a particular subject. And, as an example, and it's a really basic example, but if we take English literature, if you're doing English at A-level, You have a list of books that you have to read, a list of texts, poems, whatever else, and you do that and you read them and then you respond. If in an interview for English, and we say to you, well, what have you read? What we want to know is that you are a voracious reader, that you have gone out there, that you've had a range of different things to read, that you've got excited about them, that you know what you like, what you don't like, that you haven't just restricted yourself to what you like, that you've read across different periods, across different genres. It's all about that. And if you're only doing what the bare minimum is to pass your A-level, then you don't stand out at all. So people who have that natural enthusiasm. The other thing is about people being themselves. We want to know more about you. It's called a personal statement for a reason. I could write you a perfect personal statement in terms of content, but it wouldn't be about the person. We want to know more about you, what motivates you, what excites you, why you've chosen a particular course, and that's got to come across in your personal statement. So be you.
That's great. And back to your first point, what we don't want to see in a personal statement is, you were mentioning about English. So I've read too many statements where they talk about The Handmaid's Tale. So really, you've got to be thinking beyond the syllabus, beyond other things. And as David said, really broaden things out. Butcherbird, interesting name, has said, are there any, I better answer this, are there any activities for Careers Week that are related to teaching and history? Yes, we had an amazing teacher talk yesterday. One of our computer science teachers did a talk about what it's like to be a teacher and getting into teaching. And that will have been recorded and you can see it on the Careers Hub. You'll certainly be able to see it by next week. And as far as history is concerned, what we're trying to get over with things like history is that the transferable skills that you're learning when you're doing history. Some people say, I don't want to study history because I don't want to be a museum curator. Actually, history teaches you so many different skills, from how to absorb incredible amounts of information, how to communicate, how to analyze. There's so many things that it teaches you. So all the talks that we do are effectively related to history. I mean, I don't know what, David, if you've seen the kind of careers that your historians go into, it's not just about research or anything. They're presumably going into things like accountancy as well.
They go into all manner of things. Accountancy, they might go into the media, they might go into working for, the BBC or wherever else. Students that do history go into law, quite a lot go into law, all manner of different things, because it's about, there's a discipline, there's a research skill. So a researcher on any level, if you are doing a history degree, you will have to do research. You'll have to look at the different primary and secondary sources of information. You might have to go into libraries, you might have to go online doing all that, verifying what the research is. So huge different opportunities. And it's the same with lots of other subjects as well. And even those which look like they have a very obvious career direction, law students, not all of them go into the law profession. In fact, probably only, I don't know, I was going to make up a statistic there and I'm not going to fall into that.
I think it's like 50%. Oh, you're not
50%? No, certainly not all of them go into law, but those qualities are important. Many chemistry graduates go into accountancy because they're highly numerate, they're very good at analysis and those sorts of things. We were hearing on one of our Degrees to Save the World webinars last night from someone who's got a psychology degree and works for Ernst & Young. So any number of different options for people, and most graduate level jobs don't ask you to have done a particular degree. What they want to know is that you've done a degree, you've got all of the skills that brings with it in order to then go into a career.
Yeah. And the other thing that they're wanting to see is that you're spending your time at university, not just down the pub, although that's really important, but also getting really involved in all the amazing things that university offers. So can you get involved by running committees, by joining societies, by doing sport, by setting things up, by doing entrepreneurial things, social justice? So many things. That's the kind of thing that universities are looking for, as well as that employers are looking for, as well as your degree. So it's super important for Barton students that when they get to university, they hit the ground running and really get stuck into everything, the amazing things that university has to offer. I think that's really important. So Claire's asked a really interesting question. Do many Barton students stay local and go to the University of Southampton? Actually, are you seeing, David, a trend towards people staying local?
I don't think nationally we haven't seen that trend, actually. And interestingly, this year compared to last year, we saw more students going from one region to another in terms of where they go to university. So, which I thought was quite surprising, actually. I thought the pandemic might have made people stay a bit closer to home, but we saw more movement in that context. And I think we get a good number of Barton Peveril students, and we love Barton Peveril students. They're always very high quality that come to us here at Southampton. But then also the students will go to Portsmouth, or they'll go up to Oxford, or they'll go to Reading, or they'll go to Exeter, all over the place. And I think it's about finding the right university for you and finding the right experience for you is really important. That might be just down the road. It might be a million miles away. I'm from Preston. I don't know if any of you have ever been to Preston. I wouldn't recommend it. And, you know, I applied to Aberdeen partly because I was doing geology, but partly because I wanted to get as far away from my parents as possible. And as this sort of cycle went on, I realised that actually that was possibly not entirely practical and not the most sensible. It's a fantastic university, gets at least 2 hours of daylight a year. And I just thought, no, do you know what? That is too far. So I'm going to go somewhere close. So I went to Liverpool, having been in Preston. It's only about an hour down the road. And that was great for me. It's far enough away to feel completely independent and on my own and big city living, but close enough that when I needed support or feeding or cash or whatever else, I could be home relatively easily. And so you will all have your preferences as to what you want out of an experience. You're down here on the south coast. You could go a very, very long way away if you thought it was sensible. But there are, you know, within 2 hours of here, you've probably got access to every sort of university, every sort of course, every program. You don't need to go much further than that. You know, London has 40 odd universities with as many courses as you can shake a stick at. Here in Southampton, you've got ourselves, you've got Solent down the road, there's Portsmouth. There's so much choice and so many options. So whatever suits you is the right thing to do.
Yeah, and do come and see us if you want to discuss that. I mean, interestingly, my own children went to Edinburgh and one went to Durham. So funny enough, they're getting as far away from their parents as possible.
I'm not
I can't think why. But anyway, yeah, it's an issue that everybody it does well to discuss, and discuss it with your parents, discuss it with us. There's advantages and disadvantages to both, definitely. So the next question is, how easy is it to do work experience if you want to go into teaching? Do you need CRB checks to work in a school? Come and see our work experience coordinator, Mo Latham. She will talk to you all about that. Yes, you will need DBS checks. We can organise all that for you. So we can definitely help with work experience with teaching. Hannah asks, are you willing to have a second look at students who are not able to achieve the specific grades needed for their course? I think you kind of answered that, didn't you, David?
Usually we can. If we have space left, so when we get the results in summer, all the people that have got what we asked them to get are in. Okay, so they are in and they are guaranteed their place. If we then have some place, we then look at those who've just missed out by a grade. And we tend to prioritise those students from those who may never have applied to Southampton, because we know that those students have applied to us, they've perhaps come to an open day, they might have organised their accommodation, they've got their heart set on coming to us. And the fact that they've missed out by one grade, if we can, we will admit them and bring them in. Sometimes, however, we don't have any space. Sometimes we are absolutely full with students who have met their requirements, and so we're not able to then offer a place to those who've missed out by a grade. But one of the things that I would advise you to do, and I know that the college will as well, is looking at what you think you're going to get and having a bit of a range of universities that are there. So if you're predicted an A and 2Bs, don't just apply for 5 universities for an A and 2Bs. Maybe have a couple of ambitious ones at 2 A's and a B. Maybe have a couple that are at the level that you think you're going to get. Maybe have one that perhaps is asking for 3 B's. And that gives you a bit more flexibility because you're making this application relatively early before your exams at the end of year 13. So by the time you get round to when you have to make a decision, you'll have a better idea of the grade you're going to get, and we'll be able to focus on putting your firm choice as a realistic but equally optimistic and exciting choice for you.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Charlie, I know that Charlie's thinking about sort of engineering type degrees. So he's asking, what's the advantage of doing a master's over a BSc?
So the advantage is that it takes the learning for another year further. So it's an additional, it's a higher level qualification than a bachelor's program. And you can do a master's in one of two ways. You can either do it after your degree, so you do your bachelor's and then you do a separate course, which is a master's. But in other areas, and I suspect if you're doing engineering, it'll be what we call an integrated master's or an undergraduate master's. That's enrolling on a 4-year program that takes you all the way through into a master's. And it enables you to have another year, usually of some additional specialization. So you get to delve deeper into a particular bit of something like engineering, and is seen as a higher level qualification by employers as well. So it brings all those benefits with it. You can usually swap between a bachelor's and a master's as you go through. You can apply for one and potentially move on to the other one. And of course, you can always do a master's after having done your bachelor's program as well. But the 4-year master's programs, the MEng programs, or MChem in chemistry and those sorts of things, I think are fantastic and get stuck in. Sometimes they will have a slightly higher level of entry requirement because they are a 4-year at a higher level of qualification. But go for it is what I would say.
Definitely. Thank you. And Talita asks, I think we'll better take this as the last question. What work experience, if any, would you suggest for someone who wants to study psychology? I can get that. It's a bit of a myth that, and I hope David agrees with me, I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, that work experience is an essential thing for your personal statement. It really is for vocational courses like medicine or nursing, or primary teaching. For anything else, what's much more, we love work experience. As I said in previous talks, we think they're good because they make you mature. They give you kind of lots of different skills just to kind of help you grow up. But in terms of your application for university, if you're applying for psychology, I hope I'm right in saying what you're doing academically is so much more important. Apart from else, it's very difficult to get into some psychologist's kind of consulting room because of all sorts of different secrecy, confidentiality things. So actually, what you need to be thinking about is work experience is, yes, good for your skills, but in terms of your application, it's much more about what you're reading and what you're learning over and above your A-levels. It's much more about you, any kind of extra research that you're doing, how you're stretching yourself and showing what David was talking about earlier, showing your passion, your curiosity, your academic interest is so much more important than doing the actual work experience. I hope you would agree with that.
I think that's absolutely right. And certainly for something like psychology, as you say, the confidentiality elements of it mean you're not going to get into the room quite often. But I think, using, particularly if you have an interest in pursuing a career in clinical psychology, then doing research online, understanding what a psychologist actually does, what their role involves, what they might do on a day-to-day basis, beyond what you might have seen in television programs and that sort of thing, really getting under the skin of the profession and what it means, I think is hugely valuable. And you don't need to be sitting in a psychologist's office in order to do that, but you can learn and you can research. And I think, in the absence of specific work experience there, engaging with a university talk by a psychologist, for example, or looking into a psychology journal in online or in the library, or, what's the latest happening in the world of psychology? What are the latest thoughts? Thinking about the sorts of writers that you might be able to get a second-hand book from Amazon on that deal with psychology, I think that would be really valuable and probably more valuable than work experience per se. So look at the academic side, look at what's going on there, understand what latest developments are, and that'll help you to do a really strong personal statement.
Thank you. And actually, just a quick shameless plug, but on the 24th of March, we've got an author who's also a clinical psychologist talking to students. So check that out. we're going to have to end it there. David, thank you so much. That was absolutely brilliant. Spot on.
Thank
Perfect. It's a pleasure. You're going to have to come back again next year. So thanks everybody else for joining us too. And enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you. Thanks, David.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.